many resolutions have survived the first 17 days of 2021? Honestly now? Stats say you probably are just about done with them. One of the resolutions that sounded simple at such a quiet time in our lives was to make time for meditation or contemplation or even daydreaming, all in search of inner peace and tranquility. But what sounds as if it should be easy can be a real challenge. Normally, so many of us lead lives that closely resemble that of a worker in the anthill or a hamster chasing itself about on its wheel. We rise to the alarm clock and grab a quick breakfast, then drop the kids to school and grab the nearest bus and off to work. Lunch hour involves either eating at the desk to try to meet the deadlines or tracking down chores at the nearest mall or picking up the dry cleaning. The end of the workday takes us back to another traffic jam or standing in the subway mob with dinner to be cooked, homework to supervise, a quick workout at the gym, little league baseball to coach, a drop-off at choir practice, catching up on the housework, mowing the lawn, or shoveling the snow. If lucky, we catch an hour's TV while folding the laundry or making tomorrow's lunches, and then a shower, and losing the battle with exhaustion, to bed. Pick your own variations, but life is normally so filled with things that must be done. And yet, over the past 9 months, we've learned what it's like when we are totally discouraged from socializing and going out and meeting with others. Gyms are closed, teams shut down, theaters shuttered, home offices created, and schools online. No more traffic jams and hours on commutes. No more chores instead of lunch. Now it's just a step from the office on the kitchen table to the microwave and dining. No need to go shopping for a seasonal and fashionable wardrobe. Pajamas and tracksuits have no season. And with hairdressers and barbers unavailable, shaggy beards and ponytails are acceptable office stylings. So why has this time of reduced stress, timelines, and obligations not resulted in reduced blood pressure, increased peace, and tranquility? Instead, to judge by those I encounter by Zoom or phone calls, a quiet panic has replaced the normal day-to-day stresses of our formerly normal lives. I'm inclined to think that we've evolved into people who need a level of stress to feel secure. Perhaps the anthropologist would say that it's a holdover from the days of fighting the saber-toothed tiger or fleeing both ocean and alligators. Or is it just that we've moved so far from the pastoral life of the shepherd, responsible only for protecting his flock, that we do not know how to really relax? Although the attacks of marauding wolves doesn't sound very peaceful. Well, how can we learn to take advantage of this time? A time unlike anything we have known before. These days it seems as if an almost unfocused trauma is taking control of the minds of many, and it seems to lie at having lost the ability to control one's own life, to come and go as they please and to re-engage in the hectic life that they knew. Never having had much free time, how to occupy it? I would imagine that when convicts are first jailed, they go through something like this. And this second shutdown seems to be much harder on people than the first. Then we cooperated and accepted the directives of the politicians and the medics so that we would be safe, all would be well, and we would collectively contribute to the greater good. Now it feels more imposed, and fear-driven acquiescence is not the same as collaboration. Yet in the back of our minds is the old definition of insanity. If it didn't work the first time, then what fool keeps doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome? There's a general sense that this just isn't working. And then the loss of freedom overwhelms. The inability to follow one's own sense of what is right for oneself and one's family and what seems sensible. Free will suspended. It's scary. And that is supposed to be okay? But we need to look for the tools that can help us to deal with this odd new reality. I would suggest that we need to try and place all these irritating directives that are dictating how we live our lives into the same bag that we put all the other things that governments do that are irritating and limiting. After all, we know that the 401 was built for people to go 135 kilometers an hour, our streets to go 65 or more, and yet we're limited to 100 or 40 or less. When we can start drinking or stop drinking or where we can drink is limited by bureaucrats. Depending on the ward you live in, determines whether you can have chickens in your backyard or whether you can chop down the tree that's tearing up your shingles or your plumbing. We've become accustomed to these irritations and inconveniences, and so many, many more, and we've learned to accommodate them. Now we need to do the same with the latest rules for 6 feet borders invisibly circling about us, or how to decode our nearest and dearest when unrecognizably masked, or how to avoid starvation with restaurant dinners off the menu, or how to enliven bubble birthdays. The reality is that for most of us, this is all just irritating, and hopefully we will emerge from this with a greater appreciation for personal freedom and a willingness to defend it against ever greater political encroachment. But we are stuck with this reality for now. Bashing our heads against the invisible limits and moaning to one and all about it merely provides a headache to add to the other discomforts. Instead, how about exploring ways to come out of this better than when we went in? There are online courses. I'm currently studying Celtic history and have a writing course awaiting. If the schools of Ontario adopted this device of harnessing the talents of the very best teachers, teaching the subjects that they love and recording them for every student in that grade to use, students would be turned on to education in a way that few ever experience in the classroom. Teachers could continue to be a resource, answering questions, leading debates, and making sure that the children understood what they heard and saw through quizzes and papers. But I digress. My recommendation is that you set some of those empty hours aside for your inner self, your soul, your spirit, your heart, or whatever name you give to the best and least explored part of you. And then invest that time in contemplation or meditation. In the West, people tend to use these two words interchangeably, but there is a difference. Technically, meditation is a human mode of prayer, whereas contemplation is divinely infused prayer. Most religions offer guidance on the subject, but it's my experience that everyone approaches this in their own unique way. Despite the best efforts of the Sisters of St. John, I am not great at it. I still keep a pen and paper beside me to banish any insistent chore that needs doing by writing it down to deal with later. What I do is I take a question that is challenging or confusing and reduce it to its most simple essence. And then I just relax with it and let my mind wander into nothingness, clearing it of all distractions and the myriad paths you explore with thought. Just go with it. You don't have to get an answer. You just have to clear your mind of clutter and concerns for a while. Escape into the peace and tranquility that time, which has no demands, alone can bring. Of course, you are the one that has to free up that time to do so. And therein lies the challenge. A challenge worth accepting. Sometimes there is an answer. Sometimes you come closer to God. And sometimes you just fall asleep. Let me share my most profound experience in the hope that it will inspire you to give it a try. I was with a Wycliffe group studying in Jerusalem while waiting in a state of stress and worry to find out if the diocese would accept me as a candidate for the priesthood. After a busy morning, we ended up in the Garden of Gethsemane and were instructed to find a comfortable spot under a tree for some contemplation time. I sat down under one tree and just could not sit still. Up I got and moved to another tree. Same problem. It was as if I had ants in my pants. So, stepping over others already deep into their own world, I found a third tree and instantly settled in, and my mind began soaring as if it was in one of those tiny World War I fighter planes. Barriers kept popping up, and between and around and over and under them I flew, soaring within inches of crashing. Walls of stone, wood, bricks, seeking to cage or crush or demolish me. Countless challenges and dangers, and yet I raced and veered wildly on, safe from everything that stood in my way. When someone shook my shoulder to tell me we were moving on, I felt this incredible loss of that glorious world I had just inhabited. Then, as I rose to my feet, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that despite all the challenges that would lie ahead, I would be accepted, my calling would be discerned, I would be a priest. And with that assurance from God, all my anxiety and worry about the future and the path that lay ahead left me and never, ever returned. Time spent in meditation or contemplation is a gift that you alone can give yourself, and it is one that will serve you well for a lifetime. Guaranteed to be better for you than stewing over the misdeeds of the politicians and the selfishness of those who are indifferent to the needs of others, and all the things you cannot do at the moment. It needs no equipment. It needs no fancy candles or incense, music or visuals, although some find them useful. It just requires you, your time, some space alone, and your God. Rest assured that the promise of Psalm 46 will guide you. Be still and know that I am Lord. Well, these are my thoughts as more constraints and more deaths occupy us, and the doors of the church remain closed. But God is within each of us, and the church is the people. God bless, and so may it be. Amen. Uncertainty as to when we will regain our freedom is stressful, so be good to you. Plan a special dinner, even add some candlelight, and get dressed up for it. The old flannel shirt and jogging pants are not worthy of such an event. If you can't go out, you can at least be good to you at home. And my culinary bonus? An ice cream cone for breakfast tastes particularly delicious. Until next time, be well, be blessed.